This Week in Radio Tech, episode 173, is brought to you by the Telos VX multi-studio talk show system. Telos VX is the first and only multi-studio talk show system designed for radio and TV broadcast production. Improved audio quality and cost savings from day one. On the web at telos-systems.com/VX.
And now, our feature presentation.
Twert.
What do you do when it's time to order voice over IP services? Who to call first? Tech consultant Bill Putney has been there and tells all.
All right, calm down. He says that to everyone.
This calls for immediate discussion.
What's up, Dad?
All your days are belong to us.
From his palatial office of important business.
Or in a choice hotel in a distant land.
This is Kirk Harnack.
Mike Phillips and Bill Putney join Chris Tobin for a practical look at SIP VoIP services and how to get started.
You're dialed in to This Week in Radio Tech.
Welcome to This Week in Radio Tech, episode 173. Kirk Harnack is not here this evening. He is taking care of an air conditioning system that's failed. He's got a studio that's over 100 degrees, and he himself is becoming fatigued, but he's enduring and doing his best to maintain some sanity. At least that's what he said on the phone, though it did sound kind of crazy, and he kept dropping it several times. But with that, I'm here tonight to introduce our guest, Bill Putney, who's with us. I hope I had that right. And we have another guest, Mike Phillips. For those of you who may not know him, or maybe you do, he's in the background a lot here at the GFQ Network. I'll just leave it at that. Chris Tarr is at a local zoning board meeting, as he mentioned last week that he would be attending. So heaven knows what he's saying to people or what crazy things are taking place. Those of you in the audience have had an opportunity to sit on a board meeting at your condo complex, a co-op, or village. Know what it's like to have differing opinions. Then again, you can watch that on C-SPAN every day. And Tom Ray is at a speaking engagement on some new technologies for himself with his new company. So that's the lineup and the roundup of how we have things for this evening. So this evening's topic, though, today's topic, whatever time zone you'll be in when you watch this on the on-demand services of the GFQ network, it's about voice over IP, VoIP. And we're going to try and cover briefly what is VoIP. How can I use VoIP at my radio station or TV station or maybe a web station? And how do I manage the office, studio, LAN traffic with a VoIP network? What needs to be done in order to keep things from colliding and collapsing? Also, we'll try and cover, can I create a carrier class VoIP wireless phone system at my radio station so that I can move about as if I'm on a wire, but I'm not? And also we'll try and cover soft phone apps on VoIP. Can they be made reliable? So if I'm using my laptop with a headset because maybe I'm working in the conference room and I need to get to my extension and do stuff. And we'll see what else we'll try and cover. Oh yeah, does VoIP make sense for off-site offices or locations? Maybe you have a sales force that needs to operate from home because of the physical distance between the radio station, their home, and their zone where they cover for sales. Does it make sense? Is it affordable? And also something that came up recently, some stuff I've worked on with VoIP systems over the years. These days, corporate compliance, business compliance requires certain things. Does the VoIP system I use off-site require some type of secure connections? Is a VPN sufficient, or have to do something beyond that? Crypto, basically. So those are the things we're going to try and cover, and hopefully our guest, Bill, can shed some light. And I'll now introduce Bill. Let him give us a little background of himself. He's been in and out of the industry, which will be very helpful for everyone to understand where he comes from when he speaks about what he's going to do. And then we'll touch base with Mike, and then we'll come back and begin our crazy hour of talk. Bill, would you introduce yourself and give us a little background?
Oh, sure. I'm Bill Putney. I'm currently the chief engineer for KPTZ, which is a community FM broadcast station in Port Townsend, Washington, a little community of 9,000 people out here in west of Seattle. I know most people don't think there's anything west of Seattle except Hawaii, but Port Townsend is west of Seattle by about 35 miles. I was always interested in broadcasting in high school and college, and worked in Los Angeles in a couple of broadcast stations in the 60s. A wonderful time in broadcasting. Never made much money at it. Had a series of people who loved to have me around, but whose checks were not always the best. Went off into the military, came back in 4 years, and decided I would get a paying job and got into telecommunications and IT. Done technology, been a technology analyst for Sun Microsystems before it was Oracle, for network equipment technologies. Really early one of the early .coms. I was a chief technical officer and periodically the CEO of California.com in Northern California. And when we registered all those domains, there was less than 100 .coms in the world. I know that's hard to even
fathom right now.
But the years went on and made my fortune such as they were, and moved to a small town in Washington State, and here I am back in broadcasting, my first love. So that's me in a nutshell.
Excellent. That's great. It's actually very helpful. A lot of folks don't realize, sometimes you have to go away from your passion and come back to enjoy even more fruitful love of labor, or labor of love, I should say. So before we continue on, let's briefly talk to Mike Phillips, find out a little bit about Mike. Everyone in the GFQ network knows Mike, so that part's done. But those of us in the broadcast audience for the This Week in Radio Tech have probably no clue. Maybe they've heard the name once in a while. So Mike, why don't you give us a little insight?
Yeah, it's like a bad dream. I'm a lot like Bill. I haven't been able to hold a job either. My father actually built a radio station in small town North Carolina back in 1962 when I was 9 years old. So I grew up in that business and was rather intrigued by the technical aspects. We had a pretty doggone good engineer back in 1970. He built a lot of neat gadgets. I wanted to learn how to do that. So I took over the radio station at about that time and did all the engineering for it until about 1984. But because I was so excited about the engineering aspects, I actually went and got a degree in electrical engineering and went into engineering in the mid-'80s. And as soon as I got into that, I knew that wasn't going to last. So I then went back to school and got a law degree and have been doing that ever since. But what's interesting and why it's relevant is because once I discovered how much bandwidth is available, and once I saw the broadcasting things that are going on, like TWIRT, like the guys from Queen's Network, I was blown away. I wasn't paying attention. It caught me off guard. I mean, you think about back in the old days, we would have a Marty RPT, and we were tickled to death to be able to go 20 miles with a decent-sounding signal. Now we can go around the world for free. So that's what's gotten me interested in the broadcasting aspect of things now. And I provide a lot of audio consulting to internet broadcasters because they seem to be able to understand the video, but for some reason the audio is a problem. And we get most of them worked out.
Well, it's funny. I've had a lot of television brethren that I've worked with that had the same problem. So I think it just comes with the territory.
Audio
is harder to do.
It is.
Yeah,
It is.
it really
Actually,
is.
it is. Yes. Yeah. So, all right, great. Hey, one thing we have to just do a shout out to a fellow engineer in Chicago, WLS AM and FM. Ed Glab is retiring this week, so this Friday will be his last day, and he's been there for almost more than 40 consecutive years. So just a quick congratulations, and I've met many folks over the years who've been mentors and people that I've learned a lot from, and they're retiring quickly. So the talent pool is starting to shrink, sort of like in professional sports. So it's up to us to sort of carry the torch and move things along. So with that, we have Voip. How did it's like voice over IP is such a broad statement these days. It encompasses so many things that are probably many are correct and some are incorrect. Bill, if someone comes up to you and says, "Hey, I got to do this Voip thing. What is Voip? Can you tell me what it's about?" Because I have a lot of folks that always call me and ask me that question. I'm curious, your take on that. How you'd answer that?
So I guess for the easiest way to understand it is, everybody's now friendly with MP3 and friendly with maybe a little less with AAC, but friendly with the idea that you can take an analog signal like a voice, and you can break it up, you can digitize it, you can compress it, and you can transmit it some other place and reconstruct it. So what Voip does is voice over IP, which is what Voip is kind of codifies, codes that arrangement so that the common contexts that people have about making telephone calls, a dialed number, before phone companies, this was a phone company's domain. You dialed a number, something magic happened. The person's phone at the other end rang. That still kind of goes on. Those numbers get registered. You dial it at your end on a VoIP call. The phone company or the VoIP carrier or whoever is handling that traffic for you figures out where it has to go. And that's essentially what they're doing is, in the old days, they'd translate that phone number into a town somewhere else, central telephone office somewhere else, a switch and a line appearance in that telephone office, and then a pair of wires and ring a phone out at the end. Well, the internet and all that IP technology makes it possible to just kind of, in essence, you do a translation. You say, this phone number goes to this IP address, this internet address, and they drop it in the pipe, and it falls out the other end through the magic of routing. And it's the same paradigm as a switched analog call, but of course we know that in the internet there really isn't much of anything that's switched. It's all packets addressed to something dropped in one end of a long pipe that kind of fall out the other end and find their way to the right destination address. I don't know whether that makes it simpler or harder to understand.
No, that's good. No, I mean, if you're understanding IP technologies or IT at all, that explanation is perfect. So the days of the switching relays and the clacking stepper relays in the central office are gone, and it's now just a quiet hum of fans on servers, basically.
Well, basically, but that technology, if you get under the skins of things, one of my intermediate careers was that I worked for Pacific Telephone and Telegraph Company, a Bell company in Southern California.
Pack Bell.
So I got to know how those things work inside, and from probably the 1950s on, and you're familiar. A lot of broadcast engineers are familiar with ISDN. Well, ISDN was an outgrowth of T-carrier. This way of taking an analog signal, sampling it, sticking a digital ruler up to that sample, and then sending that measurement to the other end. That whole T-carrier, ISDN, all of that stuff, all that was being used in long-haul telephone services for just years and years and years. Slowly but surely, all of the old analog frequency division, multiplexed analog radios and analog coaxials across country for long haul, all that stuff has gone away and it's been replaced by digital methodology. Well, all that T-carrier stuff was pretty simple. Now along comes the iPad and the iPod and MP3 and all these ways of making really good sounding audio out of really low bit rates. Now it's possible to transport the same sorts of material over a lot more impaired, if you will, lines. They don't have to be as pristine and perfect as those T1 lines had to be to carry this stuff.
The conditioned lines for T1 and ISDN and all the other various switch services. Right.
So I guess what I wanted to get across there was that this isn't something that happened this year. That it's been a slow progression towards this, and I think as broadcast engineers, we're always suspicious about what do you need that second grid for in that tube. One grid was doing just fine, but those things creep up on us.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It's very true. Hey, you know what, Mike Phillips, I'm going to ask you the same question. Friend of yours comes up to you, or maybe a client or whomever, and says, "What is this thing VoIP I keep reading about? Do I use it? Is it on my phone?" How would you, from your disciplines, your background, would you explain, say, VoIP to somebody?
Well, for starters, even though it's not accurate, I say it's like Skype. Skype is SIP, and maybe that's VoIP, maybe it's not, but they understand what Skype is. But also, it's the various providers where they provide you with an ATA at home, you plug it into your internet, and you can make telephone calls over the internet using a standard telephone. So it's a digital telephone service. It's not standard copper wires like we're accustomed to POTS telephone lines, which I still prefer. At Vonage, they've heard about Vonage, they've heard about the various carriers, and pretty quickly they realize that it's, to them, sort of a new faddish sort of thing. But then if you dig a little deeper, you find out that I would suggest at this point that probably most multi-line telephone systems installed in businesses at the enterprise level are probably all really VoIP, and that is their SIP trunks. In that the calls are being carried over the internet as opposed to these mass bundles of copper wires going back to the central office, or in this case, to the PBX system, what have you. It's a new world out there.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Cool.
I think I saw a statistic, and I want to say this was a 2010 study that was done, that 80% of all the new corporate telephone systems are VoIP-based. And I guess that's a differentiation between, there used to be all these proprietary, they were digital phones on the desktop, and they were, but a roam telephone would work with a Nortel switch and all this. Well, now all those proprietary things are starting to go away because companies are put in such a dense local area network infrastructure that it makes it really simple for a company to add a phone on a desk if they can just plug it into the same switch as all their other LAN traffic. And maybe they have a separate VLAN for the phone system just to kind of control that traffic, but they can still do it on that same copper pair or copper Cat5 or Cat6 cable that goes to a desktop, and they don't have to run completely separate systems to run their office computer systems and their phone systems anymore. So I think the acceptance in the commercial and the business end of things has just been tremendous.
And that's an interesting thought, too, because I'm not convinced that the businesses have made the switch because it's better. They've made the switch because it's cheaper. I say that because the old Bell South, AT&T PBX is tied up with copper from the set to the PBX to the central office. Phone calls never sounded any better than that pure copper technology. But the limitation of the lack of availability of copper pairs, because these feeder trunks are deteriorating. It's expensive to maintain them. You've got the phone company that if you have a copper line, you get noise on it, they go throw it over to another pair. They keep doing that and they're out of pairs. Now they start throwing it from one bad pair to another one. So the idea of being able to use fewer copper pairs and getting many, many, many more multiplex lines going back to the central office is extremely attractive to the phone company. It's attractive at the enterprise level. And if you are like in the radio business and the internet broadcasting business, the cost is cheaper because you have the internet. You can apply that same technology to your own studio. For example, I actually produce a radio show on Saturday mornings. The host is in Tennessee. I produce his show here at my home studio using Skype and Voip, and the show is then fed back to a terrestrial radio station in Tennessee. And the calls that we make and receive when we bring callers onto the show, that's all done by Voip. And it's all done with a soft phone. I use a fantastic client, SIP client called Blink at icanblink.com, available for Mac and PC, and there's free versions. I'm not affiliated with them. But if you will get a SIP account that allows you to make POTS calls, you have a very useful system for making telephone calls. You can do the same thing with a Skype account, but you have to have Skype numbers to call in. You have to have Skype credits to dial out. But with just iCanBlink, the software called Blink, you can make the phone calls, but you can also make SIP to SIP calls, which is really an area that I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I think it's kind of one of the best kept secrets for computer-to-computer communications, and there are a lot of engineers who don't know much about it yet. But you take two computers, each has its own SIP account, and you call and you talk for free forever, like Skype, and you can even do video with some of these accounts.
Yeah, no, I agree with you completely. My previous job, I was part of a team that installed a enterprise-level VoIP system, a Nortel system, and we made sure that all the bandwidth we needed properly was managed. The switches were all set up, and we created VLANs for the voice traffic. And I have to say, the quality of the audio when you made a call and you talked back and forth, it was a very, very close to copper. I mean, copper would probably be a little brighter sounding, but it was very clear. Everything worked the way it should. But then I've worked with other enterprise folks who didn't take the care and feeding of their network as well as they probably should. And you can hear degraded sound. It's interesting. So I guess a lot of it has to go with what you understand and what you're trying to achieve. Which brings
VoIP has got. I was going to say VoIP has gotten a bad name, being an early technology at the consumer level, because some of the vendors like and I'm trying to remember who they are. Packet 8, which is 8x8, and then there's
that goes back.
Quite a few of the companies out there that are appealing to the consumer market. Magic Jack, VoIP. Everybody's heard of Magic Jack. And these things don't always work really well. Plus, if these servers, the companies, if their servers are oversold, they don't have the capacity to support the traffic, then you pick up your phone to make a phone call, you get no dial tone, you dial it, you don't get an answer, you call someone on the other end, at the other end, they pick it up, you can't hear them or they can't hear you. I mean, there's all sorts of problems that have given VoIP a bad name. But the technology is mature at the enterprise level, and it seems to be maturing at the consumer level as well.
Yeah, I think it's just at the consumer level, it's about cost and how much people are willing to provide that quality of service. Bear in mind, we've grown accustomed to over 150 years of a phone system, the Bell system, whatever you want to call it by, whatever affectionate names you may have. But it's a system that was tariffed, that had rules of the road, so to speak. So what we've taken for granted, where there was dial tone always on the telephone handset, part of that was because it was a regulation that required it to be there. So the infrastructure had to be built to support it. Now as we move to IP, a lot of these tariffs, I'll call them, or rules of the road have been removed. And as a result, you get what you pay for in some cases. And,
for now.
And that's what I've discovered. I mean, I could be totally wrong, but that's what I've discovered to be the case.
I've got a sidebar to this, and it's probably relevant to a degree. You know, I think what we always think of when we think about the telephone network, the way it was as for the Bell operating companies, for AT&T, when that was monopoly, I guess, and even the subsequent large carriers that came on the heels of that after the breakup in the 60s. Those organizations, they wanted to everybody to be able to pick up their phone, have a dial tone. You know, if you picked up your phone and you didn't have a dial tone, you really need to look outside your window and see if there was mushroom clouds, because nobody expected you to ever pick up the phone and not have a dial tone. When I was working at Pacific Telephone, we had a long distance switch that I think, because of an operator error that wasn't corrected by the manager that happened to be on duty at that switch at that time, was down for something like 5 minutes. That man lost his job. He didn't get to work in the phone company anymore. And that's the level of responsiveness and responsibility that the phone companies demanded of the people that work for them. And I think that the telephone company customers expected of their phone companies. Well, here we are. Now we're not in the 60s anymore. We're in the 21st century, and things have changed. In the little town that I live in, Port Townsend, Washington, they did an upgrade to the facilities. They're not using the microwave facilities to get from Seattle or Tacoma or wherever the nearest toll center is to Port Townsend. Now it's on fiber. Well, they had these fibers and carrier systems when I was working for the phone company too, but you always had route diversity. You always had, if it was a microwave system, you had space diversity in the microwave system. You had A and B sides, redundancy everywhere. Never be a time when you couldn't pick up the phone and get a dial tone. Well, the phone company, who shall remain nameless, that owns Port Townsend, if you will, put in this fiber network to increase connectivity and minimize their costs and all those good things. But they ran it on poles down one road with no redundancy. I'm sure there was redundant fibers inside that one fiber cable. But about 3 months ago, somebody in a dump truck forgot to put their bed down and drove under the fiber, turned the whole city of Port Townsend off, dark, in terms of communications for most of a day. If back in the old Bell days, if the engineer who'd engineered that system, he'd be out flipping burgers someplace. They wouldn't have put up with it. And now it's just, well, it was less expensive to do it that way than it was to have a redundant route. So it's not any longer about customer service. It's more about service to the shareholders. Well, okay, it's the way it is. But these are the sort of things when you go into doing, when you say, oh, I wish we were back in the switch circuit days. I just don't think the switch circuit days are around anymore. You can't get them out here in the boonies. There is one ISDN qualified tech for the whole Olympic Peninsula. And the Olympic Peninsula is whatever it is, 50 miles long and 40 miles across, however many square miles that is. And if the guy's on vacation, there is no ISDN support. So,
yes, this is true. It's true. The same as here in New York City. I can tell you that radio stations I've worked at, we had the equalized lines, and there was only one guy in, two guys in Midtown Manhattan that knew exactly how they worked, functioned, how to equalize them, how to flatten out the lines, so to speak. And it was interesting watching him trying to talk to the younger group that had no idea what these services were about. Then there was also three people that served the 5 boroughs of New York City that can do digital services, ISDN T1, where they could actually properly troubleshoot it when there were issues that went beyond what the book would tell you. Oh, wait a minute, they don't have a book anymore. That's right, the Bell System books don't exist. You're right. Switch services, switch systems have definitely, it's evolved. I have no problem with moving on from switch services to we'll call it a packet switch network. My issue has been shareholder value experience is what's corrupting the ability for businesses to really provide a service that they've built their business on. Think about it. The phone companies. Pick any phone company name. Whether it's Pac Bell or Southwestern Bell or SBC and AT&T, Verizon, New York Telephone, or Southern New England Telephone. They all are successful and have created their success stories and now become 2 or 3 companies. That's it, because of, as you pointed out, Bill, those demands or the expectations that had to be met. And now it's flipped. Now it's shareholders who dictate what goes on, and those shareholders have forgotten or never even realized that the reason they've been enjoying some of this stuff was because of these practices, which are now pretty much gone. That's putting it in simplest terms, but that would be my opinion.
And I think that that pushes it as broadcast engineers. That a recognition of that is important to have, because you can't depend on those people to always do the right thing for you anymore. You have to recognize that there's a few tatters and holes in the cloth that you may be called upon to patch. Well, so all this stuff is gone. So all the ISDN is fading. Switch services is kind of gone, but it's not all bad news. The standard Voip services that we can get now replicate 1940s, 1950s copper wire, if you will. They're 3 kilohertz wide services, and that's the kind of the standard run of the mill Voip.
Yeah.
But all this technology that it's built on, and the way things are done, there's now high definition, what they're calling high definition codecs, that 2 phones can negotiate a high definition call. It's much better sounding than you could ever get on a standard copper wire. I know that I was talking to somebody earlier today, and kind of when Mike brought up the soft phone, I was thinking that, well, okay, so if I had a soft phone on my computer, in our studios we use iMacs, Apple iMacs for studio computers, and we interface the optical digital inputs and outputs, line inputs and outputs, to our console. So if I run a soft phone on that iMac, I've got a beautiful hybrid right there connected digitally to my console. If I've got a remote studio someplace, somebody else has got an iMac hooked up to an IP network. You've got think of the way it was with the analog days. You had a 2-wire circuit out there some little baby hybrid in your telephone that split the microphone and combined the microphone and the earphone, sent it over 2 wires, got to a toll center. It got split back into 4 wires, got sent across the country, got recombined into 2 wires, went to the far end phone, got split apart into four wires again for the microphone and headphone. And everywhere along that path, you added a little echo, you added a little noise, and all of these artifacts of doing things that way, have the potential of just disappearing when it's all transported in the digital domain. So it's not a dark picture. I think that, Telos and their VX system, to an extent, so far, I'm hoping for greater things. But Comrex with their
Stack VIP,
and Comrex has a little iPhone app, so you can do essentially high definition voice from a reporter or somebody in the field or a listener with the app into their hybrid system.
Yeah, they do.
I think it's a rosy future, and we as engineers, in our own best interest, really need to step up and first understand what it is and how it works and what the limitations are, and then carry the ball.
This is true. I can say that when I did the work on the VoIP system at our previous job, we went. I sat with the guys and we went through everything to try and I guess I called it mimic the traditional switch system we're all familiar with. Reason being, it was 6 radio stations in one facility, and all the stations, with the exception of 3 FMs. No, I'm sorry, all 6 stations did a heavy talk. All right, there was a lot of phone traffic. We did a lot of stuff. So we had to make sure the system worked just as well as the old 1A2 systems we had in the old studios before we moved. So going from copper switch to now packet, and I have to say it works like it should. And as Mike pointed out, VoIP has a bad name because of the consumer side of stuff. Us in broadcast will call ourselves the enterprise level approach. And Bill, you're absolutely right. Learn it, understand it, realize how you can really make it work for yourself, and you will be surprised at how good, how stable, and I'll call it, say, 4 nines of reliability you can build into it. Now, that does come with a price tag. Don't think you're going to buy a $60 or $2 router and plug it in and make it your VLAN, and not VLAN, make it your VoIP LAN. All of a sudden, you're up and running. So just bear that in mind. Don't take the consumer thinking and bring it into the enterprise. But there's some. I think we probably should at this juncture maybe talk about the pricing of things. One of the things that I've discovered is that VoIP can be a really friendly place if you find the right carrier. Yeah. From a financial perspective, we're a little station, and we're a community radio station, so we like to say that we don't count dollars, we count subscriber years. So it's and the community of Port Townsend itself, the city of Port Townsend, our city of license, is only 9,000 people. So you can imagine if 10% of the people listen to public radio, and 10% of those people subscribe and pay out of 9,000. I don't know what that number is. It's something under 100, and it's more than that here. But you get the idea. We're not rolling in the dough. We're not CBS or NBC.
But that's true for internet broadcasters as well. I mean, absolutely. Everybody's having trouble funding all of their desires when it comes to the internet broadcasting realm, and I think that reality is one of the most exciting things about VoIP, because if you think about it, I mean, you mentioned 1A2 key sets, when you try to hook a hybrid up to a 1A2 key set, I mean, think back before the days of digital hybrids when everything was done without the benefit of digital signal processing. You actually would have to make a telephone bridge and try to manually use inductance and reactance to create and simulate the phone line to get the greatest hybrid loss that you could and the greatest isolation between transmit and receive. But right now, with a soft phone like Blink or Bria or one of the others and a Voip connection, you've got almost perfect isolation between send and receive. If you take that Voip like we do here with telephone calls, or like we do with Skype or the other Voip type facilities, you combine that with a mix-minus feed on a mixer, and you have an almost perfect telephone hybrid. The only real thing the two real things that prevent it from being a true enterprise grade or level hybrid is that the SIP service, the VoIP service at the consumer level, as we've said, is not as reliable. And I forgot what the other one was, but it works extremely, extremely well for very little money. One of the problems that you can get when you're trying to use a VoIP service with internet broadcasting for telephone calls is finding the right account provider. An interesting thing happened to me. I actually got a SIP service for my second home phone line, and that service was $99 a month because the company was just starting up. They were, not a month, a year. They were trying to get customers, so I subscribed to that. As I got deeper and deeper into playing with VoIP and SIP, and I started looking at that account, I was thinking about canceling it because I had other ways of making calls. They mysteriously reduced the price to $49 a year for their early subscribers. And as I investigated, I found out that it was actually just a SIP account, and I found that I could access that very same account to make and receive calls using a SIP client on the computer. So now for $49 a year, I can make and receive unlimited telephone, long-distance phone calls and phone calls for a telephone number that is local right here in my city. It's kind of, you can't duplicate that because the account is not available unless you're a legacy member. But as time goes on, that funding level will be available, I think, if not even less than that. And it just works fabulously well. The point being that I think it's a fabulous time to be able to handle communications for not a lot of money for community broadcasters, for nonprofits, for internet broadcasters, which are unintentional nonprofits.
You're absolutely right, Mike, but there are still those deals out there. I just when I set up the telephones in the studios at KPTZ a little over 2 years ago, we got the phone company came out, some VoIP suppliers came out and gave us a pitch, we'll give you a line and we'll give you a phone number and it'll only cost you $100 a month. And I said, well, what we really need, we have a receptionist and she needs a phone. We have a couple of air studios and they have individual hybrids we use for like news call-ins and guest call-ins. They need a phone number for that. But then we've got this 6-line, in our case, 12 lines. Some places have hybrid for the gardening show, the auto mechanic show, in the city in Port Townsend, the boat repair guys show. That's maybe 2 or 3 hours a week. So what I really want is I want you guys to sell me a phone number for some money a month, and then I want you to charge me for minutes. I don't want you to give me an unlimited phone line that I can only have one call at a time on. I want to have a phone number and minutes and as many phone calls as I want. So the office phones, the single line phones in the studios for those hybrids there. The 6-line hybrid that we have for our multi-line call-in show hybrid. All those things. So the carrier that I found was a commercial grade carrier. This is a wholesale service. This is a reason why and the engineer who takes the time to understand VoIP and maybe plays around with it a little bit at home, fiddles with it, and then goes to make a pitch to his management or his management, and says, "Look, I can save you a lot of money. I'm paying $2 a month for a telephone number. I'm paying 1.2 cents a minute for calls, as many calls as I want. This particular supplier takes a credit card. They charge you $50 to start with, and every time you run through that $50, they charge you another $50. And those wholesale carriers are out there. If you're the engineer that knows how to deal with VoIP and how to debug, at least at the rudimentary level, those connections, I think our station has spent maybe on all of its telecommunications facilities $300 last year.
That's great.
And this VoIP stuff is a lot of fun too. I mean, from an engineering perspective, I've had a blast playing with these VoIP and SIP connections. I don't know how many hours we've played with new codecs. We've got a very wideband codecs. It's a new age in terms of WebRTC. We've got the Opus codecs that are being released, H.264, H.263. I mean, the old G722 quote-unquote HD codecs, those are old news now. It's a new day, and to me, it's really exciting. In fact, I'm wondering how long it's going to be before before people are putting these Omnia 11s on their VoIP lines to enhance the quality before it goes into the mixer.
Well, I know a few people that probably would have already done that. So, nice segue into our sponsor for those of you who have followed us for these years. As you know, Telos Axia, the Telos Alliance sponsors This Week in Radio Tech, and I have the pleasure of talking about the Omnia 11. And right now, there's also, by the way, there's a new software release. Let me make sure I have this right, because I know Frank and the boys would be very upset and can't have that. New software release, version 1.4 is out. So if you're a current user of Omnia 11, I'm told it's a free upgrade. And if you're not using an Omnia 11 and you have an Omnia product that maybe it's time to be retired to a secondary path or maybe an HD path or something else, consider the Omnia 11. Why? Well, let's see. On-screen help, quick setup, sync master control, multiple security levels. I'm just going to read a little few of these latest releases for version 1.4. Low latency output limiting for the DJ monitoring, which is handy. Those of you still do it that way. And then there's the famous Thunder Boost control. That's all I'm going to say. There's other things that go with that, but you'll have to look it up yourself. Just an end-of-phase rotator for smoother voices and all the specialty details that go into that. But the Omnia 11 and the folks that have put it together, what's his name? It did it. I can't think of his name now. That's so bad. But the guys who put that together are geniuses when it comes to giving you control. That's all I'm going to say. Audio processing is subjective. I know friends of mine who have done it for years, and we've played around and we've had arguments and we've thrown beer bottles at each other and those of the non-alcoholic beverages as well. And it's been fun. But the Omnia 11 gives you so many controls, so many things you can do. It's just fascinating. And me being a fan of audio, I've done it all my life, it's something you have to look at. It's something you have to listen to. And you should call your Telos dealer, distributor, ask them about if they do loaners. I don't know if they do these things anymore because the products just work. Or maybe put down a couple of bucks, get it to your place, you like it, you pay off the rest. You make a deal. It's horse trading time. But trust me, check it out. Get audio samples. Maybe if you have a professional courtesy with the guys in town, the other engineers, because we all have those, handshake deals nobody knows about, but we all know when it comes time in trouble, we all group together and help each other out. Maybe you can get a look-see and get a listen to it and say, hey, wow, no secrets, no giving away secrets, but that kind of stuff. So check it out. The Omnia 11 version 1.4 software has been released. Those users that have it, you should go for the free upgrade. Those users that don't have it and wish they had the competitive edge in their market or signature sound, you should consider it. And it's something worth considering. And by the way, I'm not paid by these guys, but Frank Foti and the others, Gooley, Cornelius Gould is the guy I was trying to remember, Corny. These guys work really hard, and Frank, as you know, is very outspoken, so I have to do my pitch, otherwise, who knows? No, I'm only kidding. Gotta have a little comedy in this, because if you don't, it's not fun. Omni 11, check it out. Omnia products in general, I've used all of them, so I can honestly say I've used them. The Omni 11 I've not used directly. I have worked with people who have, so I had a chance to play with one, listen to it, be part of a team of people that adjusted it and made a signature sound for their station. But I've used all the other products over the years, and it's great stuff. And for those of you that remember Cutting Edge and the other things, I've used those too, so you know where I'm coming from when I say it's worth a try. Check it out. It gives you tools you've never had before. So I'll leave it at that. And that's, again, Omnia, OmniAudio.com or Telos Alliance, whatever you like to do. Maybe you need an Axia product, you check that out too, and you swing over to Omnia. So do Axia, Omnia, maybe you need a VX system now, we're talking VoIP. Who knows? It's a complete ecosystem under one umbrella. Worth checking out. That's all I have to say for now. So that's it. We'll go back to our VoIP stuff. What I'd like to ask Bill, one of the questions I had from somebody recently, an email, was what does it take? If I'm a radio station, and I could be a smaller station, as you point out earlier, the CBS's, NBC's, the Cumulus of the world, or maybe I'm a facility, a smaller size, making money, enjoying life, doing just what I need. Okay, I'm not going to penalize anybody for being a smaller operation. There is no big, good or bad about that. But I want to do VoIP, and I realize I need to consider something so I can get more flexibility. You pointed out that there are soft phone applications for the iPhone that people could be using to enhance the quality. So if I want a competitive edge in the market, everybody knows what a cell phone sounds like, and sometimes, and as we know, the vocoders in these cell phones are getting worse. Maybe I want to have something that sounds a little better, something that creates a signature that says, hey, these guys, when they do something by phone or what appears to be on location by phone, sounds better, I'm willing to listen to it longer. What would you suggest, or, I know that pricing is one thing, but maybe just some of the nuts and bolts, like, switches or the type of phones or, SIP trunks and, a list, like a laundry list of how to go about it, or do it in-house, or go, like you say, to an outside service, or maybe a hybrid of that.
So KPTZ is we're on a shoestring always. So we're kind of a DIY house here.
Yeah, but don't forget, we're in a DIY society these days. So as Mike Phillips pointed out, a lot of things. So it's you do it yourself. So you can use your station as an example if you like.
Okay. So we built this 2 years ago. 2 years ago, okay. Let me back up a second. There's a reason why broadcasters like, and why talent and phone screeners like broadcast hybrid systems. If you look at the user interfaces on a broadcast hybrid system, for a guy that's not me or Mike, for a guy who comes in on Saturday and does the garden show and then leaves and goes back to working at his nursery, having an interface like a Comrex Stack provides, or an interface like a Telos VX provides, boy, that's great for them. They get the smiley faces when the person on the line is happy, and they get to choose the person that's coming in, and it's all been pre-screened by the producer, and life is good. 2 years ago, the VX system was out, I think, in release 1, and the Comrex Stack VIP was something that they could talk to me about, but they have to kill me when it was in that mode. So what we ended up with was a Stack 6, just your common garden variety analog Stack 6. I'd used Linksys multi-port ATAs, these telephone adapters, with some pretty good success. They're a kind of a business grade ATA. I'd played with asterisk switches. I had home service, and so I built asterisk is for those who don't know, asterisk is kind of the prototypical freeware voice over IP telephone switch. You can download 35 different flavors of it. Just Google asterisk, and you'll find all kinds of different versions of asterisk. They typically run on Linux, or they run on some Unix-like operating system. So I built an asterisk switch. I got these Logitech hybrids, hooked them up to our Stack 6, our Comrex Stack switch, a couple of VoIP office phones. A friend of mine knew a good commercial wholesale carrier, and gave me the information on that. And it took me about 3 or 4 days of fiddling around with it to set up this telephone system. Granted, I had already done a lot of the background. So if you're out there and without a lot of time on your hands, there's some options. There are you need a switch, I think. I really feel that you need a switch to get the kind of control and to do the sort of things that broadcasters want to do with their telephone systems. And there's a couple of ways to do that. You can get an asterisk switch downloaded off the network. I loaded mine into a PC that I picked up at a surplus PC store for $200. Because it's using the Ethernet in and out to do voice over IP. You don't need to have a special magical interface card, and so you get the calls in on VoIP on Ethernet, and you put the calls out to your VoIP station sets and to the VoIP ATAs that drive your hybrids. So that's one approach. Building your own completely from scratch, which is what we did. It's not hard. There's a learning curve. You're gonna, bite some fingernails before you get it figured out. But it's something you can play with at home. At these prices, at $2 a phone number and a 1.5 cents a minute, and anybody can get one of these commercial accounts if you just act like you have half a clue. That's where the dividing line is between getting a commercial account and getting a what was your favorite off the late night TV telephone company account anyway. So there's
also remember that you can get a free VoIP account for now with Google Voice. You can make and receive telephone calls with a soft phone using the Google client. And there are also other devices that you can use with Google Voice such that your home telephone can be a Google Voice number. Help me here. I can't remember the name of the device, but you can buy it on Amazon for like $50. And is it Oomla or?
Oh yeah, I think it is something like that.
Uma,
yeah.
Yeah, and so you get free telephone service. Again, is it commercial grade enterprise level? Absolutely not. But if you're going to do internet broadcasting, if you are podcasting, even if you're a community station, a non-com, you know what? You can get by with a lot whenever you don't have the money to go full tilt. So there are just so many options out there. It's just, to me, it's just quite exciting.
It is. It absolutely is. And you're right. I mean, I will agree with Bill. I've played with the Asterisk server software. It's you do need to focus, stay alert as to how you're setting things up, and take notes and make sure you don't just hurriedly just hurriedly typing stuff in. But it's pretty cool what you can do. And you're right, the pricing is good. It's in the right.
There's some other options too, and I think you can do kind of a half a loaf here. So if you want to get your feet wet, but you don't want to, go in over your head, you can get, I think, free PBX, which contrary to its name is mostly free. I think it's free to download, and there's a basic certain subset of things that you can get with free PBX. It's got a really nice user interface, kind of a, its asterisk is a hardcore kind of person's interface. Free PBX is much more friendly.
Yeah, asterisk is like Skull Unix.
Right. So one of the things that you can get with free PBX is SchmoozeCom, I think, no commercial intended for these guys, is that they will sell you a support contract. And they'll sell you a support contract at several different levels. They'll ship a already pre-configured free PBX in a box, drop shipped to you by UPS, and you plug in an Ethernet and a power cord, and you've got a VoIP system. And you call them on the phone and say, do I plug in the sharp, pointy end of the power cord or the boxy end of the power cord? And they'll walk you through it. So you don't have to put your fingers in a vice to get into this technology. The nice thing about something like free PBX, and I don't mean to pick on them, but they're one that I'm a little familiar with, and there are quite a few others. Is that if you go to a wholesale commercial grade carrier, it expects you to be a telephone guy buying service from them. That's why they don't charge, $100 a month for a telephone line. They don't want to be on the phone all afternoon telling you which key to punch on your keyboard. They expect you to know what you're doing. They do their work and do a good job of it. You do your work, you do a good job of it, everybody's happy, keeps the costs low. Well, if you pay SchmoozeCom to support your free PBX, you say, okay, SchmoozeCom, I'm going with XYZ carrier. I've got a commercial account. Here's the SIP account information that they gave me when I set up the account. Load that in my telephone switch. Ship it when you got it. And it then becomes a situation where I think it behooves you as an engineer to know what's going on, but you're less likely to stub your toe and embarrass yourself in front of management if you take that route. And maybe you do that for the first year, and the free PBX really is free. And in the second year, once you've got it all figured out, it's all settled down, you maybe say, well, thank you, SchmoozeCom. You appreciate your hard work, but we don't need to pay you anymore. And that's an option. So that's a way to get into it without putting your life in jeopardy so much.
That's perfect. I actually have a friend of mine who's looking for something similar. Was asking me just recently about that. So I'm going to turn him on to free PBX and SchmoozeCom and tell him, run with it, see what happens. It'll be good. I'll have to get back to everybody on that one. Well, we're coming to about an hour on the show here. Actually, I think we're a little over by a couple of minutes. But Bill, I want to say thank you very much. Your insight to the VoIP world and the we'll call the switched world makes it helps to. I think this background we could probably spend several hours on VoIP, as we all know. But I think this hour we spent talking behind the scenes of it, understanding why it's what it is, the reputations it has, good or bad, how it can be applied, and the insight from both Mike and Bill, I think, offers enough for any of us followers of the show and those who are just introduced tonight or to this particular episode. You understand that because IP gives you so much flexibility, as I like to say, that you can basically, it's like an onion, just peel it away, and depending on where you're looking to go, either stop at the first layer, second layer, or go all the way down to the center if that's the best part. I think this has been great. In Bill talking about the stack product from Comrex at the NAB, Tom Hartnett, the VP of Engineering Technology at Comrex, has been championing, as you pointed out, and Mike pointed out, the wideband codecs, and telling people, talk shows, you have a chance now to break away from the shackles, I'll say, of copper switched networks and go with something that can now make your audio on phone comparable to the audio in the studio and make the conversation easier to listen to. So I think you're pointing that out with what you're doing with the stack analog and then combining it with the ATAs or I'll call it the IP phone stuff coming in, the SIPs. That was a great way to go about it if you want to meet in the middle rather than spend money, rather than spend money on a Nortel switch or something.
Yeah, Tom was the guy who told me he could tell me about this new product that was coming, but he'd have to kill me.
Yes, Tom has done that with me on several occasions over the years. But he's a good guy when it comes to stuff. He gets it, and he's like, if he's telling you something's coming and he can't tell you about it, odds are they're just minutes away from introducing it. You'll be like, an aha moment. That's what's great about him and the guys at Comrex.
And to give you an idea, I think of the scope of the applicability of voice over IP, you take what we've done here at KPTZ, which has got to be the, short of, I guess, maybe some of Mike's customers that are, one line and a podcast, at least in the broadcast world, we're kind of at the lower end of things. If you look at the guys who run 6 studios in a complex, feeding 12 transmitters in 35 states, and a product like the Telos VX, wow. Think of the rat's nest you'd create with an analog POTS telephone system and feeding analog boards when you can take VoIP in off an Ethernet connection and send out live wire out the other side to however you want to divvy it up among studios. It's just wow, what a new day.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. No, it's I think it's you're absolutely right. This is not a bad time for this to come out. This is a perfect time for folks to just look at it and go, wow, I can do this, this, and this. I mean, I know because I worked at a facility where we did VoIP and we made it work, and we did, I'll call it carrier class approach because I just couldn't take a chance. The 6 stations we had there just, we're talking millions of dollars, and one talk show was enough to basically pay the salaries of everybody. So it's like, you got to make sure it works. But to go to the other end of the spectrum where you're at and people in between, where I've also worked at that level, to be able to find a solution that meets your needs so that the content that you're using to make money and enjoy market dominance, that's the way to go. I mean, I wouldn't think it's a bad thing at all if I had free PBX, asterisks, or anything else and say, hey, this makes sense.
And Chris, in that regard, if we've piqued anyone's interest or curiosity about SIP or VoIP and they want to learn a little bit and play with it, do go to iCanBlink.com, iCanBlink.com, download the Blink client that has a facility built in to give you a free SIP account at sip2sip.info. Then get a technical friend, to do the same thing. Call each other, set it up, play with it, get a feel for what the VoIP is. If you get an ATA with a standard VoIP service, all you know is that you plug it in and it works. When you start getting into the soft clients and setting up the accounts and those sorts of things in the background, you really start getting a feel for what the technology is all about. And it will be a lot of fun, and it can be helpful as well.
Yep, you're absolutely right. I've used many soft clients on the right server, and it's a lot of fun what you can do. Get real creative.
There is a location on the net also, voip-info.org, and there is just there's service providers, there's equipment vendors, there's how-tos, there's white papers, there's just a lot of information out there. Don't be afraid to go out and swim through some of it and experiment. I mean, that's when I was growing up as a child getting interested in radio, that's what I did, was experiment. Ham radio, that's where we all came from, or a lot of us came from. So, get back in that experimental mode.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, we have to wrap things up here. I want to thank you again, Bill, for participating with us. And as our air conditioning system has been turned off momentarily, it gets a little noisy here. The temperature in the studio is rising. Not as warm as it's been for Kirk today. Just for those of you who are curious as to Kirk's whereabouts, he's at one of his radio station transmitter sites, and he said to me this afternoon the temperature they were reading on the thermometer in the room was 102 degrees Fahrenheit. So you could just imagine working in a facility that warm, that hot, and humid, and what it must have been like. So I have
the hot
done
hits.
Yeah, playing the hot hits on the wax on those turntables.
I take it that's not American Samoa.
No, it's his other, it's his other ones. So, our thoughts are with him, and he's doing his thing. And I've been there. I've done that kind of work. I still do it on a contract basis, and I know what it's like to work at a transmitter building with no air conditioning and on a summer night like this or summer day. So it's challenging, very challenging. So, but with that, I must say, this is it for our episode. Mike, do you have any parting salutations?
No, I really appreciate you guys inviting me on. I really am intrigued with SIP and Voip and the ham guys and the technical guys and the engineering wannabes who don't know anything about it are missing a lot of fun.
Oh, that's true. It's absolutely true. Well, I just want to thank our sponsor again, and those of you tuning in late or staying with us throughout the hour. The sponsor for this show is Omnia, Telos Omnia, the Omnia 11. And like I said, I've done a lot of audio work, and I've enjoyed a lot of different products. And Omnia 11 is definitely something you need to look at and check it out. And again, don't always tweak for the highest number. Don't turn the knob to 11, expect the results. Sometimes you have to go the other way, and you'd be surprised what you get. That's all I'm going to tell you with the Omnia 11. Less is more, and trust me, you'll be very surprised. Corny Gould and I talked once at NAB, and I told him my thoughts on it and how I set up the box and showed him at the special room we were in because it wasn't available yet. And he was quite impressed with my understanding. So I'm parting this out. As Bill said, we have to experiment, and those of us who are ham operators know that thinking. The tinkering part, tweaking. Try not to go in the direction of a positive number. Go negative and then listen carefully. So with that, This Week in Radio Tech, episode 173, comes to a conclusion. So thank you again for supporting us, tuning in, checking out what we have to say and what we do. And again, Bill, thank you very much. Your description of VoIP and your background and what you've talked about was perfect. It was spot on. For those of us in the audience who may not be totally technical, I think it was still enough to digest and not be intimidated by. And as always, Mike Phillips brings a certain class to the conversation and a certain smile and very, very calming effect. So I appreciate Mike coming on board, and we'll have to have you come back a few other times.
Anytime.
Zen master.
What's that, Bill?
I say Mike's the Zen master.
The Zen master. Well, those of us know behind the scenes, that may be another word, but anyway, that's for another show.
I guess we're missing the geek Jedi tonight, so we have
There's no
Zen
geek
master
Jedi.
instead.
Yes, that's right. Yes. So Chris Tarr is at a local zoning board meeting, and heaven knows what things he's stirring up there. And Tom Ray is at a speaking engagement, and if anything, he's making him laugh, and he's doing a fine job of pontificating on technology. So that's where everybody is tonight. Well, again, thank you. This concludes This Week in Radio Tech, episode 173.
That's all the bandwidth we can pilfer this week. Another twort has propagated, and all the transmitters and audio equipment live happily ever after, thanks to the handsome engineer and his kind, benevolent care. We'll be back next week.
Lord willing and the creek don't rise.
This Week in Radio Tech. Subscribe to iTunes and you'll never miss a show. Search for This Week in Radio Tech in the iTunes Store. Soliciting is strictly encouraged. If you like today's show, tell a friend. If you didn't like it, we were never here. Kirk Harnack's wardrobe provided by the Salvation Army and the Red Cross Disaster Relief Services. Hair and makeup provided by Penelope Garcia Hernandez Weinberg.
He's unique, wouldn't you say?
I just want to get it over with.
This ends this transmission. Tango, Whiskey, India, Romeo, Tango. Signing off. Okay.